So today is November the 3rd, 2024. We are with Sister Zola Hall of the Kearny Ward, longtime member of the Kearny Ward and the Globe Stake. Thank you, Sister Hall, for agreeing to talk with us as part of the Globe Stake 50th anniversary series.
My pleasure.
First thing I want to ask you, tell us about your name, Zola. Where did that come from?
Do you want me to say what I just said?
Yes.
The Stapley family here in Arizona had 5 major stores in the town, even though the Arizona was very slim then. And there's one son was Delbert Stapley. He was an apostle. And they had a daughter whose name was Zola. My dad worked for the family at that time, and he liked that name, and that's how his name Zola.
Amazing. And of course, Delbert Stapley was the apostle who presided over the creation of the Globe Stake 50 years ago. Did you know, so since your dad had worked with the Stapleys, did you know the Stapleys at all growing up?
Well, no, I remember going into the store when I was about 5, the Mesa store, Stapley store, where Daddy was working. And that's about the only contact I had. My dad was not a member. My mother was. She was out of the Shumway tribe here in Arizona. But that, I know.
So did you grow up in the Mesa area?
I grew up in the Chandler area.
Was Chandler much of a town then, or was it a lot of farmland?
Well, there were only 1,100 population, and the farmland was great, yes. And when we left there in 1946, my dad bought the PZ Ranch out here between here and Mammoth. And I was 16 when we moved here, and I've never forgiven him.
Have you pretty much been here ever since?
Yes.
So tell us a little, did your dad ever join the church?
No. He had a lot of friends who were members, but he wasn't interested. He was a Mason, Masonic Lodge. But no, he was not interested in church.
And did you attend church growing up a lot?
No, or? I didn't ever go to church when I was a kid. Mama had pulled away too. That was tough.
How did you get back to church?
I just can't remember the exact. I was baptized in the Mesa Temple in an October time. My birthday was in August because they closed the temple in the summertime. And we had one other member here, Shirley Riley, who also was baptized as an 8-year-old in the Mesa Temple. It was done, and not too many could say that.
But overall, growing up, you weren't that active.
No church. Didn't ever go to church. Oh.
Well, tell us about your husband.
Well, when he grew up in Hayden, went into the Marine Corps. It was toward the end of Second World War. And then when he got out, he came back to Hayden, and we met. And then we eventually got married.
When the two of you got married, was he a member of the church when you got married?
No. He was 40 when he was baptized. I had a cousin who was very active in the church. He came out here to see us one day. He was also a missionary. He did missionary. He was older than Tommy. And he came to see us one day, and he said, "Tom, I came to see you about getting baptized." And Tommy said, "Okay, let's do it."
That quick?
Yeah, just like that.
What'd you think?
I was astounded. I was in the other room, but overhearing what they were, I almost fell out of my chair.
Was that, now at the time, had you been active in the church?
I had started, yes. I started being active in the church over in Hayden, when we still were in Hayden.
Now, let's talk about Hayden a little bit. Hayden used to have its own branch, correct?
Oh, yes.
And what was that like?
Well, it was like everything else at Hayden. Everything was company oriented, who you were, what you did, that sort of thing. It took me a long time to become adjusted to that because I wasn't from a company town. I didn't know about it. I always said the wrong thing. But we had a wonderful bishop over there. We had what is it before a bishop when you're not a bishop? You're running the ward.
Like a branch president?
Brad's president. Mike Griffith was his name, Byron Griffith. He was great. And then Bishop Wright came along. He moved to Hayden. He was employed by Asarco. And he and his wife became good friends of ours. And he ran that like a board should have been. Before that, it was just hard for Brother Griffith because the people were so different and not interested. That was hard.
What was the building like?
Well, it was a cement block building, 2-story. I had a number of rooms upstairs. Then it had a full downstairs and a large room for recreation, for dinners and that kind of thing. And a large parking lot out back, which was downstairs.
Now, eventually, the Hayden ward or the Hayden branch became the Kearny ward.
Yes.
And
Yes.
were you here when that happened?
Pardon?
Did you live here when that happened, I guess?
No, we didn't live out here when this became, no.
Okay.
We did too. We moved here in 67 and this became a ward in 72.
Okay.
Yeah, I beg your pardon. My brain cells are getting scrambled.
Oh, you're doing fine. So, and basically when that happened, I think as I understand it, the old Ray branch kind of got combined with,
Yes.
and that was probably around the time that Ray kind of got closed down and the town of Kearny was created.
When
right?
the mine, Ray was built right on top of the mine because it was an underground mine at the time. When they decided to go open pit, that was the end of Ray. And the kids came over here for church, school.
And what was that like when the two branches or the two wards combined? Do you recall that?
No, not very clearly, but I become good friends with Georgia Milton, who went through it all because she was from Ray. Her dad had the big grocery store here then, Milton's, and they came over here and built a Milton store and stayed here.
So you mentioned, let's take you back to your husband, Tom, when he decided to get baptized, and you say it was kind of a sudden thing. What was that like for you?
It was a strange experience. I hardly knew how to respond because I had been alone as a member, of the church in our family. Our daughter was brought up in the church. Then he had a sister who was a member. That was all. But it was a jolt. It was a real change to know that he was going to be a member and what might be ahead of us, because I didn't know. I really didn't know. I didn't know if he would be terribly active, really interested. I just couldn't get a hold of it, how it was going to be. I thought he would be a certain way, but you just don't know.
Well, he did turn out to be terribly active and served in so many different capacities. Was that what you were hoping for?
Yeah. He was bishop here. He was bishop of the Superior Ward. You knew that.
And he was on the Stake High Council forever, it seemed.
28 years, I think it was. Yes. And he loved it. He really did.
So he was very busy, obviously, being in bishoprics, on the High Council, and probably was out of the house a lot, probably on evenings doing church work.
Yeah, somewhat, yeah.
What was that like for you?
Well, I'm an only child, so being alone is no mystery to me. I just had lived that kind of life that when my mother and dad were gone, when I was a kid, I was alone. I knew how to be alone.
So the Kearny Ward, I think you mentioned, was created a little bit before, a couple of years before the stake was created.
72.
And the stake was created in 74.
Yeah.
What do you recall of the creation of the Globe stake? What was that? What did that mean to you as a person who lived in the Kearny Ward, to have the Globe stake created? What kind of thoughts did you have?
Well, I knew we were going to meet a lot of people that we didn't know because we didn't go back and forth to Globe. We went to Tucson a great deal. My parents lived there. My dad was an international truck dealer down there for years and years. So that's where we went. But to go to think about going to Globe, where I'd never really gone, didn't know the town, didn't know the people. It was interesting.
Where was there any thought? Well, why do we have to go to Globe or anything like that, or is it just a different thing?
No, it just takes. Don't recall any negative things about it. If there were, I don't remember them. It was President Cecil. It was our first stake president.
It was.
Yeah.
Do you recall the meeting at all?
No.
What? Now, shortly after the stake was created, the construction began on the new stake center up in Globe.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of that? Any thoughts about that? Certainly, I mean, this is, the stake was asking for the whole stake to support this effort, and there was fundraising and things that had to take place, and people in the Kearny Ward, you're nearly an hour away from it. So.
I remember going over while they were still working on it and sweeping the floor where the chapel is now, because the construction was messy and, picking up stuff. That's the only thing I had to do with when it was being built. But we got to know a few people, but very few, really. And that distance is more than just 60 miles, isn't it?
A lot of turns on that road.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when we'd drive back at night after a nighttime meeting, there was a Brahma bull. It was black, and he would be in the middle of that road, and then he would turn his. But we were all afraid, so we were very careful. It's a wonder one of us didn't hit him.
So, let me ask this. So, as when the stake had its 20th anniversary, which was 30 years ago, there was a stake 20th anniversary book that was made.
I was part of that.
And you were a large part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It was It was very hard to get the information that I needed from people who had lived in Ray. It was so hard. Nobody that I knew who had lived in Ray would tell me how it was about the church or about just the community. It was probably as difficult as anything I've ever tried to do. Just getting the information about that little branch over in Ray.
And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, I believe your efforts in the book were largely regarding the history of Ray and of the Ray branch and the Kearny branch.
Yes.
And and the Hayden branch, and then as it came together with Kearny. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
Were you involved in writing the text of that?
To some degree. There was a couple, and it's in the book, and I think they were both teachers over in the Globe area that did a lot of the writing.
Would that have been Brother Machula?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And Brother Ellsworth, he just directed everybody.
And tell us about Brother Ellsworth.
Oh, he was a great guy. He was a businessman and could make plans, see them through. He was good at it. He was very good at it.
And when you say he was good at it, he was the chair
Yes.
of the committee that put the book together.
Yes, he was in charge of it.
And he had also previously been a counselor in the state president.
Yes.
Do you have any interesting stories about gathering any of the information for that history book?
No, I really don't have, and I'm sorry I don't have, except that I couldn't get the information about Ray that should have been in there. I just couldn't. The people that I talked to that were from Ray, they weren't interested in telling me. It was hard.
Well, maybe it'll come out someday.
I hope.
Having read that, there is a lot of information in there about Ray. I always found it interesting to read that.
Yeah.
So I think you did a good job. You may think you didn't get very much information, but there's some good information in there.
It was hard.
So one of the things that I know that you've been very involved with is not just church service, but service in the community.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the areas you served in the community over the years?
Well, I was on the local school board for 28 years, and I was on the county board of health for 25 years, Pinal County Board of Health for 25 years. And we had an organization here, a cancer society, that was wonderful. We taught so many people. I even went over to the reservation and taught some of our members, our state members, the Indian sisters. I taught them a couple of cancer classes. That was great. That was so long ago. I'm sorry that I don't have more information for you.
Well, let's talk about school board. What led you to? Did you run for school board at first, or were you appointed to serve an unexpired term? Or
I ran for it.
And what caused you to run for school board?
Just simply basic interest in what the school was doing, how it was doing, and I knew the superintendent. I knew a couple of the principals very well, and got to know some teachers. So I was just simply interested in what they were doing.
And you decided 28 years, that must have been, that's probably 7 terms, is that?
I guess. You're better. I guess. I can't remember. Yeah. I think it's 4 years, yeah.
What kept you on the school board that long?
Just the interest, that's all. Basic interest in the good of the town.
So by the time you were done, did you have any kids in the school district?
I only have one daughter. I only have one child. And she never went to school here. She graduated from Hayden High.
So your interest in the community kept you on school board, and to win 7 terms, they must have thought you were doing something right, and you were willing to do that even though you didn't have any children in the school district.
No. I had a number of friends who had their kids were in the school. I had a number of friends who were teachers. The superintendent, 2 of his principals were good friends of mine, so I had an interest. And the computers were just coming along when I was on the board. And I was very eager for our school to teach about computers. And we didn't really have a strong computer teacher. She tried. We talked about it a lot. I went into her class frequently, and we discussed computer, because I'd already learned how to use one.
So
I learned that in the temple.
Just while we're talking about community service, do you what do you think about the importance of members of the church doing things in the community, whether it's school board or health department or whatever? How do you feel about that?
I think it's critical, and it's critical for other church members of other churches to be on such things. I'm convinced of that. That keeps the organization of the town strong.
So, Let me ask this, so when this ward was first created, I think you said in 72 or
Yes.
thereabouts, when did this building get built? Was it built before then, or?
Yeah, 72 was when it was dedicated.
Okay.
It was finished and dedicated.
Do you have any stories or thoughts about the building of this building?
Well, it was remarkable what the various members did in just basic labor, painting, whatever. They did it. And all they had to do. We had a general manager of the Kennecott Copper Corporation who was a member, and he was strong. He had been on the High Council in the Tucson because we didn't have such a thing in Globe then. And so when Ivor Pickering was his name, and he saw to it that this building got built. If it hadn't been for him, I don't know if it ever would have been done, but he did. And then, what's his name? One of the men that worked at the mine, Ivor just thought the world of him and his ability to work and follow orders. He was the one that was really on site here all the time, making it work. They had every kind of a supplier you can imagine that supplied that mine came here.
So, did you have to do any fundraising?
I don't recall it.
And
I really don't recall it.
now, after the building was built, there was an addition to the building several years later, right?
Yes.
Do you recall much about that other than it happened?
No, it was needed. The man that was over the construction, he didn't follow orders just exactly like he should have. And there are some errors in this building that still hurt.
So one of the questions I like to ask people is, and this is because service and ministering to each other is real important. Are there any examples that you can think of where someone has, one of the members of the ward has ministered to you or you and your husband, where it's had a positive impact on you? Any particular stories or thoughts?
I can't recall it right offhand. I'm sure it happened.
Okay. What are there any other memories that you think you'd like to share with us about the stake or the church here in Kearny?
Well, I'm still impressed with the leadership that we've had here in this ward. We had excellent leadership. We haven't had some of the problems other churches have had, other denominations, of people falling out, leaving, mad at the bishop or something like that. We haven't had any of that, not to my knowledge. We've had people here who have been in the school, they've been in the town, they've been in various organizations in town, they've been active, and they've been productive.
Wonderful. Well, I'd like to ask if you would, before we close this interview, you'd be willing to leave maybe a brief testimony with us.
Oh, that's always hard for me, and I don't know why it is, but certainly I believe in every part of the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I don't have any problems about it. And I haven't had. I'm surprised with my basic self, because I criticize everything else under the sun, but not that. I don't know what else to add to that, but I'm grateful that I'm a member. I'm grateful that we have this ward. It's strong. We have a fine bishop now. He is so good.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being willing to share with us some of your stories and thoughts. Like I said at the beginning, you and your husband have been such critical pieces of the stake and of this ward.
Yeah.
So thank you for everything that you've done over the years.
Oh, thank you.
And that will, go ahead.
Well, this has made many memories come back. I remember when Tommy was bishop over Superior for a year. Did you have that?
Well, why don't you talk about that?
He was in the High Council. He was called to be bishop of the Superior Ward for 1 year. He took Bill Hart with him because Bill was wonderful at records. He could take care of any kind of records. And so we were over there for a year. And then the ward was dissolved and made a branch because there were so few members in Superior. Those very few were steady, but there were so few. And that's why it happened. But we had a good year with them. We could learn to like some people that we would have never known them otherwise.
Well, thank you. There are lots of good members in Superior.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts before we finish up?
Oh, I'm out of thought.
Right. Well, again, thank you very much for all that you've done.
Oh, my pleasure, dear.
And that will conclude our interview.
Okay.